Next, we have MP Cronus. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. I want to use my time today to touch on the topic of accountability and the role that Canada often plays in the investigation and enforcement of international criminal law. And the situation we're in, of course, is that we know of the occurrence of a number of war crimes in connection with children and with others on the ground, and there are ICC warrants. I'm a bit of a hawk on sovereignty and the principles of complementarity and jurisdiction, but let's assume for a moment that Russia does not prosecute its own crimes and it becomes necessary for the international international community to step in. In my time way back when I was at the International Criminal Tribunal for Yugoslavia, one of the things I really learned in that is that the quality of the evidence makes an enormous difference, not just for the investigation and the enforcement of international criminal law, but for the ability of people to get on with their lives and to have their story told and be seen. And Canada has often played a really important role. So, long-winded introduction, but in the context of the convening role that Canada is playing with Norway in the context of the missing Ukrainian children or the kidnapped Ukrainian children, what are we doing? Are we doing anything in the investigation space that will help preserve the kind of evidence that's needed? Because, of course, these things happen several years onward.
So thank you very much for that question. And Mr. President, the point about the need for evidence and the very particular exigencies or requirements for making sure that evidence is gathered correctly is a really important one. Canada was actually referred the situation among the small group of countries that referred the situation in Ukraine to the ICC in March of 2022. So immediately after the full-scale invasion began. And Canada supports investigations, including arrest warrants for President Putin and Maria Lvova-Belova. We more broadly for the ICC and ICJ and what they're looking into on Ukraine, we've contributed both funding and personnel to support investigations into war crimes, sexual violence, and crimes against children. So those are things that we've directly funded with the ICC and ICJ. I would also just mention that more broadly, through a number of different multilateral mechanisms, we have also, so I can say that so at the OSCE, we provided funding through ODIHR, which is the Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, which is part of the OSCE. And ODIHR was undertaking a very important project of gathering exactly in a trauma-informed way, gathering information, gathering evidence, gathering testimonials of what had happened so that, again, these cases aren't being prosecuted right now. I share the honourable member's supposition that I'm not super optimistic that they're going to be prosecuted in Russia, but having that body of evidence and collecting it immediately or as soon as possible and in a responsible way that will preserve its judicial integrity and relevance is something that is very important.
Thanks very much for that, and you know that body of evidence will be useful to whoever prosecutes these crimes, and the most important thing is that, of course, that they get prosecuted. I'm just wondering, just to re-ask a question I asked the ambassador earlier. It's the putting on your most optimistic hat for a moment, and I appreciate the gesture, the facial expression that I just saw on your end. What do you think the most likely pathway to peace would be? Is there anything on the horizon that we can draw hope from in the current international climate around this particular conflict?
So thank you for that question, and I apologize. My mother's always told me I need to work on my poker face. Mr. President, Mr. Chair, I guess, I would I would say that I draw optimism from the stories of resilience that we hear from the Ukrainians all the time. This is a war, and I remember my Ukrainian counterpart at the OSCE in the days immediately following the full-scale invasion in 2022, saying, Jocelyn, I feel like one of the things that's so terrifying right now is that everybody's just assuming that Ukraine is going to fall, but I don't like. He believed, and it is quite a remarkable thing considering I think the assumptions that one would draw based on the relative size of militaries, etc., that the Ukrainians are still going. So that's where I draw my optimism from. I don't have a ton of optimism about President Putin, but I do think that we all need to be determined in exerting whatever pressure we can to bring him to the table, to bring him to the negotiating table and
Thank you.
bring an end to the war.
Thank you very much.